Hello everyone, it's Ben from PC Games N here again, but this time I'm joined by...
Jordan Forward. That's me.
That's him, that's what he's here, and he's been playing a little bit of The Surge, and he's going to take a little bit of time to tell you all about it. So Jordan, what is The Surge?
So The Surge is the next big game being made by Deck13 Interactive. They're the guys who made Lords of the Fallen, which everyone compared to Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm. So they're taking a different tack this time, right? Something totally different?
Yeah, well, I mean, so they've got the exact same sort of combat mechanics, but it's now in the future. Which is, you know, instead of being all like Valhalla-y and fantasy stuff. So, yeah, it's a little bit different. And they've added to the combat quite a bit. Like, there's a few systems on top of it, but it is familiar if you've played either Dark Souls or Lords of the Fallen.
So, I mean, are we just talking about like a futuristic Dark Souls here, or just a futuristic Lords of the Fallen, or where does it sit? Okay,
so it's difficult really because it is both a Dark Souls clone and its own little thing. That sounds really condescending. It's not meant to. It's a really good game, I should say. But
okay, okay, let's start there. So you've been playing it, right?
Yeah, I played about an hour of it at Focus Home Interactive Showcase, and so the combat is hard as nails. You know, same as kind of Dark Souls. It's got so many familiar systems. You've got, you know, if you die, you'll drop all your resources like a pile of souls. It's called tech scraps though. Right. The combat is, you know, it's basically lock on. It's slow paced. And also the world's completely open, and you'll unlock like shortcuts and things like that, and you have like little hubs and things that you come back to, sort of like bonfires. It's really kind of familiar in that respect, and it does feel a lot like Dark Souls, probably a bit less polished in terms of how the animations work, like rolling and things. But yeah, the combat's certainly familiar. It's got the same kind of dueling mechanics. You know, you'll dodge a lot. You have to sort of wait for your opponent to do their attacks, and then sort of be careful with how many you want to sort of put in yourself.
Not to get too cliche, but I mean, did you find it particularly difficult? I mean, if I spent an hour playing particularly the original Dark Souls at a trade show, I expect I would have got about 3 meters into it each time, and you know, then just have been dead. So how difficult did you find it on that?
Like, so it wasn't, I wouldn't say it's as hard as Dark Souls, but I think there are some elements that make it feel a bit less fair. So I didn't think the animations were as easy to read. So some enemies you can beat really easily a couple of times, and then you come back to them and you're suddenly bereft of ideas. I got a fair way. I saw some people made it to a boss fight, which I never saw.
Right.
But certainly I think it was the same kind of pace of progress as you make through Dark Souls. Depends obviously what kind of area you're talking about, but you know, considering it was the very start of the game, it's certainly difficult. It's weird with the pacing because I actually had the same kind of hub area for the entire hour, and like all I did was unlock new shortcuts to get to and from that.
Right.
But
so you were kind of moving all around, like I guess the first area in Bloodborne's quite a lot like that, where you kind of do a lot of circles around one area. So you like go out one way and then you come back a different way, and that lets you go out another way and then you come back another way. Yeah. So you found it was quite kind of central areas that then you spiraled out from and came back to. Yeah. Eventually, presumably leading to this boss fight, even though you didn't get there.
I didn't get that myself.
I guess on the combat side, did you feel like it had multiple builds? Like I always think about Dark Souls as there's kind of roll builds and shield builds. There are also, you know, a billion interpretations and versions within that. Yeah. But does it have that kind of thing, or does it focus more?
It's hard to say because obviously I only saw so much of it, and what I saw was the very beginning. So sort of like the way you start in Dark Souls, you start with a sword, presumably. I mean, unless you're like a pyromancer or something. But so I started off with a lead pipe. And
that's a good starting weapon. That is an A grade starting weapon.
And so you've got an exoskeleton as well, and so it ties its combat into its RPG progression in an odd way. Basically, you can target enemies' limbs. So say you see a piece of armor that you want, you target that limb, you attack it plenty and lop it off and kill them, and you'll eventually, if you kill enough of them doing the same kind of thing, you'll get that piece of armor for yourself.
Right, I see. Okay.
So one of the things I did, I saw some guys with these like chainsaw / sword things, and I thought, well, I'll have that. So, you know, worked on it for a while, got one of them. But I didn't see much in terms of ranged options, although I have been told they're in there. So apparently later on you get a drone, which you can sort of use to distract enemies or attack at range, but you can't do any kind of sniping or anything with it.
And you didn't see any kind of magic analogy?
No, not really. To be fair, I don't think it would have worked in the world because it's quite a grounded kind of setting.
Yeah. So what is that like then? Like, because that's kind of the other big part of a Dark Souls type game, right? You've got the combat and how all the animation and that sort of thing works, but then you have this world which made the first game so legendary. Now I doubt it's probably, well, you won't know at this point, right, whether it's got that kind of depth.
It's an interesting one because the settings, it's sort of interesting. It's meant to be posed as this kind of what would happen if the next couple of years don't go so well, which is
quite likely at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone batten down the hatches. You start off in sort of an abandoned industrial facility, and comparing it to Dark Souls is going to be difficult because you've got on the one side this incredibly like high fantasy gothic world, and it's all steeped in mystery, and on the other you've got sort of a realistic setting that you can sort of figure most of the elements of it out yourself. You can figure it out. You see like there's mechs around, you see there's drones around, and you sort of piece that all together yourself. I'm not sure where it'll go. I did ask, and they said there's going to be some different environments and some sort of it's going to transform into sort of a rescue mission later on, whereas you very much start off in a kind of Dark Souls, figure out what the hell you're doing in that kind of situation.
So right at the start, is it just kind of like you're here, here's the camera controls, go fight that?
Yeah, it's very familiar beginning in as much as you've just got this pipe, and you find your first thing, which is a little drone.
Yeah,
you smash it to pieces and job done. Yeah. And it sort of evolves from that without much explanation or tutorial, which I quite like personally because it's a simple enough lock on.
Everyone knows that you lock onto a target, you hit R1 until the target falls over. These days, and if you don't, somebody can explain that to you, or a couple of button prompts can tell you. It doesn't need a 20-hour tutorial or whatever just to get you into that, and then it can introduce stuff gradually. So what other kind of stuff did you see? Was there a crafting system, for example?
So I sort of mentioned it earlier, this whole you can target limbs and concentrate on them, and basically you do stuff like that, you get enough materials, and you can go back to your little hub and you can sort of recreate it yourself.
Right.
You've got an exoskeleton, so that's what holds most of your pieces of armor, and you'll have to upgrade your power core to hold better pieces of armor. So that's one of the areas that seems both well developed and lacking. So it ties into the setting really well, it ties into the combat really well, and it makes it an interesting trade-off when you're attacking people, because if of course you're attacking an armored piece, you're doing much less damage than if you went for a head or something.
Right.
But at the same time, and you get some stuff, and it's a similar kind of character progression grind, as much as it will take a lot of time to sort of improve yourself. But at the same time, I haven't seen much in the way of like weird stats or crazy effects and things that you can really build a different kind of character or role out of.
Well, it sounds like it's quite grounded in that respect. So they're not going to give you, you get 50% chance to unleash a burst of lightning and stun an enemy or something. Like that just doesn't seem like the kind of thing they're going for based on footage I've seen and what you've said today. I suppose on a similar note, it sounds like they've kind of added this system on top as perhaps the logical conclusion of like the cutting off the dragon's tail thing that you can always do in Dark Souls. Like if a boss had a tail, you could usually get something extra for cutting that off. Did it feel like this is going to be something that you do on every enemy? Like, are you going to do it on bosses as well?
So I was led to believe from what they said that it would feature in boss fights somehow, and I think that's definitely.
So if you're building that system, that's where you want to use it, where like you can have an enemy that's big enough that you can actually bludgeon its leg off, and that isn't just it's dead, it means it's disabled or something, right?
And like there are I've seen some cooler sets of armor that you can get at the start. Everything sort of looked quite familiar, everything looked quite samey, so it wasn't exciting then, but I know later on you get some pretty cool sets of armor, so I can see it coming in handy there. The weapons was a cool part. I again only saw a couple of different weapons, and obviously changing from a lead pipe to a weird chainsaw saw is quite a satisfying thing to do.
Yeah, you can't, as much as I love the pipe, you can't keep the pipe forever.
Yeah, exactly. There's some cool like slow motion gore kills as well, which you don't have in Dark Souls, possibly because they don't want you to sort of slow down the action at all. But
yeah, a little bit more of an action focus, I suppose.
Yeah, and they sort of they trigger whenever you do chop something off or get like your new weapon.
Okay, so that's like kind of a visual reward, I suppose you could call it.
Yeah,
for
they did look really good as well.
Fair enough. So you're excited?
Yeah, I would definitely want to play some more. Like I didn't find myself sort of checking my watch and sort of being like, because I had well over the allotted time because I sort of ate into my lunch while playing it, and I didn't even realise it going, to be honest. So it was good fun. It's impossible not to compare it to Dark Souls though, because it has so many systems.
They're inviting those comparisons, and it's quite. I mean, it is quite brave to invite those comparisons. Like, this is a legendary game, and whenever you do this, people are going to do it.
Yeah.
We can't come in and challenge ourselves to never mention the word Dark Souls when talking about this game, just because that's what they're aiming for. You couldn't have done that with Lords of the Fallen either. It's a niche they're trying to dig out for themselves. I would hope that it sounds like this is actually quite a lot better than Lords of the Fallen in terms of having more systems and more interesting stuff going on.
I'd say if someone's comparing you favourably or mentioning you favourably in comparison to Dark Souls, that's you're in a good place.
You're doing all right. All right, so most important question, when can I play it, and when's the game out?
So I think the Surge is out at some point in May of this year.
Okay, so a couple of months now.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So thank you very much, Jordan. Thanks for joining us today. Let us know what you thought about the game in the comments below. Chuck us a like if you enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe for more of the same, and we'll talk to you in a bit.